Hello, my name's Josih, and today we'll be making another appetizer from the cookbook Western Yearly Meeting. And this time we'll be making homemade salsa from Carol King at Lick Creek Friends. Well, I've never seen this kind of recipe before. I've always made fresh salsas. I've never made them where you cook them on the top of the stove. But I can see how that would really add the flavors together and sort of meld them so they become almost like a tomato sauce or, yeah, some sort of, almost like, like a sauce that you could use with eggs or tortillas and something like that. So, one thing that I will show you before we get started is a little trick I learned about tomatoes and and if you have a gas range in your home, what you can do with tomatoes to make them sort of have a smoky flavor. Okay, I learned this trick while I was in Central America. And so what you do is just take a tomato and stick it right on to a fork that you would use for the grill. You want to make sure that you have a long handle so you don't burn yourself while you're doing this. And then you just light the fire, pretty hot fire, on the stove top. And then just turn the tomato like you would be roasting it over an open fire, out in outside. And this is a wonderful way to sort of impart a smoke flavor to the tomato. And you can do this with bell peppers as well, or any peppers. One of my favorite things is to do this with jalapenos and have that as a side for like a taco bar. It's really, really good. And so you'll see in a little bit here, it'll start to pop because that's the skin opening up, and then some of the tomato juice starts to seep out. Sort of creates a mess on your stovetop, but you can clean it up fairly easily. Now, what you want is when you'll be able to get that char on the tomato. Isn't that wonderful? It's almost like a smoked tomato. And we'll repeat that process on the 3 tomatoes that I'm going to use in this recipe. I think it calls for 6 or 7 or even 8, but that's if you're canning a lot of this salsa. So I'll be right back with you after I cut the tomatoes. Okay, we're going to continue making the salsa. So I've cut up all the vegetables and I'm just going to add them one by one to this small pot. If you're cooking like a large batch for several jars of salsa, go ahead and use like a Dutch oven, something that would hold everything. So first, I'm going to add in the onion, and I had a lot of that green onion left from the other recipe, so I just used the whites of the green onion for the salsa, which I like the flavor of green onion, especially in salsa. I think it adds a nice flavor. You know, yellow or white or red onions are even fine as well. So I'm going to add just a smidge bit of oil just to get the onions sweating. And then I'll add in the peppers, sweet and serrano peppers, and then the tomatoes. And we'll cook that all down until it's all nice and saucy. So I added the onions to the pan now, and we'll cook that on a medium heat until they start sweating. And then we'll add the sweet and serrano peppers. So while that's cooking, I'll read out the actual ingredient list for the larger batch of salsa. I'm using a small saucepan here, but if you're making a bigger batch, especially for canning, you want a Dutch oven or some sort of larger. It calls for sweet peppers, various colors, bell and banana chopped, which I've done. Onions chopped, which are cooking right now. 6 to 10 hot peppers. Of course, I reduced the size of the recipe, so I've only used a couple. I used serrano. Usually I would use jalapeno, but they were out at the grocery store, so serrano works just fine. Um, Tomatoes diced and peeled, and you saw that I had peeled the tomatoes using the blistering method on top of the stovetop. And 3 cups of vinegar. I'm just going to use a little bit of vinegar. Um, Once I start cooking everything down. Okay, it also calls for 1 and 1/2 cups of sugar. I'm probably just going to omit the sugar. I, try to stay away from things that are too sugary, especially with added sugar in my diet. But feel free, I can see how that might add a nice, sweet flavor to everything. After that, the spices are a tablespoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of black pepper, 1 tablespoon of cumin, and 1 tablespoon of cilantro. It doesn't say in the recipe, but I think it's mentioning dried cilantro, which I will probably use fresh. So I'll add that after everything is cooked because I don't want the cilantro to go brown and limp and everything. It's not great when it's like that. So I'm going to add in the serrano pepper next. Just cook that down a little bit until it's wet. So you'll be able to see, here's what the here's what everything looks like right now. Started to sweat and break down. The serrano pepper doesn't take very long. Now I'll add in the sweet pepper. They'll add a nice flavor when they're all cooked together. It's almost like a sofrito in a way. This part, at least, once you add the tomatoes, it'll cook into a sauce. But they could use this basically as with the peppers and the onions as a wonderful start of a soup or a enchilada sauce or just about anything that you would cook, especially in cooking for meat, fish, chicken, eggs, things like that would be great in this kind of a stuff. We'll add the tomatoes now, and you can see little black specks in here. That's okay. That actually comes from the peel when it was toasted on the stovetop. So I'm going to add that all in, and then I'm going to reduce the heat to low so things just simmer for a while. The recipe says to simmer this for about an hour. I think it will take less time because I have less stuff in the pan, but it'll still take a while on low heat to cook everything down until it's all combined. Uh, I'm actually going to add the salt and pepper and other seasonings except for the fresh cilantro now. It will help impart the flavor, and the salt will help break down the vegetables. Salt. I like fresh cracked pepper. So it takes a while to get it all out. Some ground cumin as well. I really like cumin, but if you're not of a fan of it, feel free to leave it out. It's actually one of my favorite spices, especially in chili. Now the salsa's cooled down quite a bit. I'm gonna add a little cilantro here. That's just for flavor. Feel free to omit that if you don't like cilantro all that much. Some people have a genetic distaste for cilantro, so that's fine. Um, I'm gonna taste this with a tortilla chip. Salsa. It's nice and mild, although the serranos catch up to you. Um, but this would be a wonderful sauce, like I was saying, for any meats, especially huevos rancheros, something like that. Be great in the morning with some chocolates or something like that too. All right. Until next time, please enjoy, and I hope you delight in your inner light. Thanks so much. I'll see you later.